clarification and for all of the work that they've been doing around this issue. Ryan, you mentioned your written submission, and what we see in our council agenda, our published council agenda, is just the handwritten form that that you send into the clerk to actually be included as a delegation. And then what we received for our on-table documents is something that doesn't actually include a written submission. So I just wanted to find out, where was the written submission sent to? Because I think it's really important that we do understand the document that you're pointing to.
Thanks, Councillors Roy. There was no written submission submitted to you. I have it right here, because
Okay.
we were required to send in any presentation that would have been provided to council and chamber tonight. Yes, we didn't do that because we weren't providing a presentation. So I have a written submission here with the plaques and impacts of what the ESA EDPA update does to affected homeowners. And I'm happy to leave these behind for you if you wish.
Okay, so you've got that there.
Or even further, we can use, if you reach out to the email, we can happily send you a copy of that as well.
Absolutely, because I'd very much like a copy. So what you mean to say is that you've got a printed document there in council chambers that is available to us, or we can contact you by email. I think I've got ESA update at ESA update portmoody@gmail.com.
You've got it. That's
Okay.
right.
Thank you, because I know that you've done a ton of work on this. So I'd very much like to get a copy, as I imagine my council colleagues would as well. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Next up, we have Councillor Milani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Ryan and the delegation for coming forward tonight. I don't know if I have questions per se. I was just kind of blindsided with this because, as far as I'm aware, it has been canceled. This whole ESA EDPA was started by staff before I got to council, so I wasn't aware of it until I got onto council. And I was one of the ones who met with your group and spoke up against it at the meeting as well. So I kind of feel a little bit blindsided here by these accusations, which I don't feel are warranted. So I look forward to reading this paperwork that you've submitted. As far as questions, Mr. Mayor, is there anything, if I move that the delegation be dealt with immediately, is there anything that we can deal with regards to this?
Well, we don't have any of the documentation that's been submitted. I don't know what we could do other than pass a motion to say that the project has been super canceled instead of just canceled.
It's kind of what I had in mind.
But Mr. Savoy, I don't know if you have any thoughts for us.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So there is no action that council could do at this time regarding the project.
Actually, just real quick, has that project, because there's people, everything is politicized these days, and anything that comes out of my mouth is dissected. So could you please confirm whether or not the project for the ESA, EDPA, for the folks at home, because there's some folks who I don't think we're going to convince, has that been canceled or not?
I'd be happy to. So I've said it before. So the project, we are not working on this project. Staff are currently not working on this project. I've confirmed that, of course, because I wanted to make sure before I said that. So we are not working on it. Part of the pausing, canceling, stopping of the project, however described, requires us to prepare another scope of work that needs to come back to council for council's approval. So that has not happened. That is not being worked on. I have instructed staff not to work on this year, 2022. Quite frankly, we don't have the capacity with the OCP. So I've told staff the ESA update will only come back following the completion of the OCP, which still has a lot of work to be done. As well, I have to confirm that this is not the urban forestry management strategy, nor is it the tree bylaw update. They're very different projects. We probably did hire the same consultant. There are a number. There's only a few consultants that do this work, and we end up, it's price-based and it's experience-based. So we could end up with the same consultant. So I apologize for that. the one thing I should stress, Mr. Mayor, is that we do have an ESA strategy. It currently exists. The official community plan contains guidelines, contains environmental sensitive areas in there that need to be addressed with development. So if you're building on an ESA, you need to get an environmental DP. So this currently exists. We currently have stream protection regulations on our zoning bylaw and our OCP. They also have to be worked on. So they also have to be addressed, I should say. So I really have to stress that our staff are not working on this project at this time. They are not. And perhaps it's being discussed in certain areas, but I can tell you outright, this project is not being worked on. And I don't know how more clearly I can say that. And like I said, staff just stressed with me just recently that they are not working on this project, and I know they are busy. So I'm sorry for the confusion. Quite frankly, I appreciate the residents coming out when this project started going off the rails, because it provided us an opportunity to look at this again and come back with a different project that responds differently to the community. So we are looking forward to a new opportunity. That is certainly not now, and it is not in 2022. So I don't know how much more I can say, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Malani.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, and aside from that, I'd be happy to meet with your group again if you have any concerns that perhaps I can address.
We actually did invite you and we never got a response. So that would be great that you'd be willing to engage with us again. That'd be great. I do have a couple of comments though, is the fact that you say you're not currently working on it. I think we're missing the point. The point is that this legislation says currently right now that you can expropriate private property. That's where we have an issue. Okay.
Oh, that's a good point. I would, and this is, I'm not trying to make a joke here, but you need to take that up with the province of British Columbia.
No.
Because the ability to expropriate land is in the hands of every municipality in the province.
So I'm going to address this one thing at a time. Okay. So first of all, the fact is that there is an ESA, and we will acknowledge that there is an ESA policy in place. It's actually quite effective, has been for many, many years. And right now it's being updated by you, not the province, by you. And so, well, that's inaccurate because your own guidelines state, the EDPA guidelines state that you can expropriate property for public use. That's not cool. And that's what we have a problem with. So update away, right? And the problem that we have with this is also the fact that this LiDAR mapping that you've introduced has now reached into unnamed ditches. Things that don't even exist. You couldn't go find that water if you tried. And now it's impacting people. Residences are being impacted. They're losing the value of their property because of this EDPA. And it needs to stop. And that's what we're upset about. It's never been acknowledged. Not once. You haven't acknowledged the expropriation at all. You just say it's been canceled. We're not working on it.
It has been.
It's been pushed to 2022. Well, why is there still references to this then? I'm confused. Why would something that's been canceled contain references in meeting minutes? Why?
I'd be happy to take a look at that. I have no idea because you didn't send in the stuff you're talking about. So no one has any answers.
It's in your own, you claim that I made some misstatements. There's no misstatements. Everything I came up with is from you and council, all of it. We didn't make any of this up. We took everything that you've provided, every meeting minute, every statement, it's in here and acknowledges that you came up with this information, not us.
Okay, next up we have Councillor Madsen.
Thanks. Some people just won't take yes for an answer. I've agreed with you. In fact, when we met, I shared a lot of your concerns. And now that we kind of got, if you will, blindsided as the public was at the time that the ESA policy rolled out. This idea that somehow the council or that some people on council sort of fomented this is fantastical. And it's really hard if you're just determined to envision this conspiracy. It's I guess impossible to convince you otherwise. But I'm actually, I think I might have mentioned this to Willie, I'm glad that Tropica brought this issue up and surfaced it, because the new LiDAR technique, for example, for identifying ditches and so forth, much more detailed, but the consequence really was not thought through, because it really does affect a lot more properties. And so you're really right to bring that up. And we need to, the next time we take a look at the ESA policy, I'm sure that's going to be front and center. Now, when the city manager says, I also get Ryan's point, because when the city manager says, we're not working on it, what you say is, well, you're not working on it now, but you'll get back to it. And I think there's truth that, I mean, you guys moved it to 2023. You're going to have to come back and figure out what to do with the new guidance from the province and its environmental department about ESA, treating ESAs in light of the fact that LiDAR shows up a lot more than we had before. You got to figure that out. But I can assure you, especially after all the focus we've put on it, that anybody here who's still on council is going to be extremely cautious about any kind of impact on property owners. You know, and none of us, you've looked particularly at me as though I've got a plot to put, I guess, a multi-use path, you said, sort of through the Alderside properties. That is completely, why would I ever want that? It's just like so nuts. But in any case, I'll tell you now then, if you will take yes for an answer, yes, I agree with you on that front. Multi-use path would be a really bad idea through your properties. So I'll support you there. Thanks.
Thank you. That looks.
Do you mind if I respond?
I don't know that there was a question there, so we're going to go down the list here. Councillor Royer is up next. Actually, Councillor Royer already asked, so Councillor Lubick is up next.
Thank you. I'll be brief. I appreciate the delegation coming in today. It's always important to voice your concerns. I did want to say that I did know, as did the rest of the Environmental Protection Committee, about the ESA update. When that came to the Environmental Protection Committee, before it went out to the public and before it came to council, it was a very high level view and seemed to make sense. And I very much appreciate, as I'm sure the rest of council does, that when it went out to the public and when we heard from your group, we heard what the impacts were going to be. And that's why it's taken that turn that it has. And I have not seen the package that you've handed in today. I do look forward to seeing that. However, if the meeting minutes where the ESA is talked about are in any of the meetings that I've been in, it's usually to say, we really don't want that to happen again. We'd really like to learn from that experience. And how can we mitigate what happened during the ESA update process? So, as others have said, I really appreciate you guys taking the time, doing all of the work that you've been doing. But the process is not meant to be expropriating anybody's property. It's just meant to be protecting the environment. And whenever this does come forward, in a completely different form, I think it's going to be really important to work with the residents to come up with something that's going to work for everybody. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Royer, do you have a question for the delegation here?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I know that Mr. Savoy was speaking earlier, and it is about this issue, but I'm just wondering if Mr. Savoy can shed a bit more light in terms of the urban forestry management plan. Would it be okay to ask a question?
What is the question?
Yeah, so the question, so the concern that the delegation has expressed is that the ESA, EDPA has been sort of repackaged, or part of it has been repackaged in the urban forest management plan. And I'm just wondering if Mr. Savoy could speak a little bit further to that, because we know that this is an issue that is keeping these folks awake at night. So the more information that we can get that can actually help put those concerns to rest, I think would just be really, really helpful. So I guess my my more specific question might be, was what pieces of, I know that there was extensive work done by Diamond Head Consulting on the ESA, EDPA, and I'm just wondering what percentage of that might have been sort of utilized in the creation of the urban forest management plan, and what can we take a closer look at? Like, how can we engage these folks to sort of to better understand their concerns? I mean, it's one thing to say that it's canceled, and I know that we have, but there's still concerns. So maybe Mr. Savoy could just speak a little bit more to the concern about the repackaging.
Mr. Savoy, is the urban tree canopy project the same as the EDPA?
They're certainly not the same project, and perhaps I see Anna there. Maybe she can sort of elaborate a little bit on sort of the differences, but I think it's just a quick opportunity for me to say something while she's prepping her answer. Is to talk a little bit about the LiDAR mapping, and this is sort of laying a conversation for the future. When this comes back, of course, there was concern about the LiDAR mapping because it showed a lot of different watercourses, of course, that weren't visible before. This, you know, and I've said it as part of the consultation process. This didn't introduce new regulations. Quite frankly, it just identified existing issues. So in the past, what would have happened is you would have applied for a building permit. You might not have known you had a water course on your property. Then through some form of assessment, it would have been identified. And then perhaps an owner might have been surprised. This was identifying something, sort of just signaling that it might be an issue. So certainly, it's a conversation for later. I just don't want the LiDAR conversations to sort of to get off track for future, because it really is just a useful planning tool for both the city and the owner. And it doesn't make any regulations requirements go away by ignoring the information. So with that said, I'm gonna ask Anna, perhaps just at a high level, to talk about the differences between the two projects and similarities, and perhaps at the end of this, if the delegation could reach out to Anna and her team, they'd be happy to provide more information, if that would be okay.
Ms. Mathewson.
Yes, through the mayor. I mean, really, when we're looking at the urban forest management strategy, it's meant to provide a vision for the forest and the tree canopy across Port Moody, and that's different, trees across the whole city. There's an engagement process that we're about to embark on for the urban forest strategy. I'll just review maybe quickly, if it's helpful, some of the project objectives. It's to provide an assessment of our current urban forests, our projected forest health, so looking at things around climate change and biodiversity. It's doing a gap analysis that looks at current policy, management, and practices against best management practices for urban forests. And it's coming up, it's aligning with our Parks and Rec Master Plan, Climate Plan, and other strategic plans that the city has in place. And it's exploring things, including forest and nature therapy opportunities. So I would say it's quite high level. It's very strategic. It does relate to things like tree canopy goals. I mean, certainly that's what we see urban forest strategies in other cities like Surrey and New West moving towards, and it is meant to give us strategic direction for our forest. But it is high level, and it is focused on tree canopy and forest health. So that to me would be the main difference between the urban forest strategy and the ESA. It is true that Diamond Head was the successful consultant in the urban forest strategy. They do have very extensive and very knowledgeable background around those issues, and we have a high degree of confidence in them moving forward on that project.
Okay. Yes, thank you very much. So, the delegation is a very researched group of folks that have extensive knowledge in biology and engineering and any number of things, in land use planning, in legal matters. So they're a very researched and educated group of folks. So they are worried that their properties are under sort of threat of expropriation. So they are seeing something in the language in which some of the city documentation is written that is threatening. And I think it's really sort of working closely with them to identify what specifically some of the languaging, even the nuances in that languaging that might be interpreted differently when there is a new council sitting at this table or new staff members, because sometimes those things that aren't, sort of bulletproof, for lack of a better term, can be interpreted differently. And we see this on different things at the council table. So it's really, really important that I think that we sort of work through this with them. And I believe that Ryan is still with us. Like Ryan, is there something, like, are you able to be more specific, or should we just wait for your memo and maybe invite you back? Maybe we could have a meeting with this delegation, council and this delegation, in sort of some kind of a workshop process where we can look at some of the city's materials and go through it systematically and really find ways to alleviate their concerns. Ryan?
Mr. Sayer.
I appreciate that, Councillor Roy. Language does matter. Written words matter. And it's the written words that you've provided. Councillor Madsen, I did not accuse you of conspiracy theory. Where you got that, I'm not sure. But I know that you knew about this. It's demonstrated that you've attended council meeting minutes. You've attended committee meetings that reference the ESA. But you said to me that it was conspiracy around the fact that we would put a multi-use path in front of my property. Your own presentation, when you held a public input, showed a multi-use pathway in front of the properties. There was a presentation that provided that. We didn't provide that. We didn't make that up. You provided that. We're not making information up. We're taking what you've provided. The EDPA guidelines refer to expropriation. We don't like that. We don't like multi-use pathways in front of our properties. So it's not about whether or not this is coming back as the urban forestry management plan, whether it needs to be updated. We are advocates for the environment. We are. I'm not so sure you are without an agenda, but that's beside the point. The reality here, we want no expropriation. We want no multi-use pathways, and we want it to stop. Simple as that. You could strike it with a line right now and remove expropriation, and this would be over. But yet you've chosen not to, and then multiple times that we've tried to engage you. So that tells me there's a reason for that. And that reason is so you can expropriate property.
Right. Mr. Savoy, does the urban tree canopy vision include expropriation of private property?
I'll have to, I would say no, because that's not really the intent. And Anna's shaking her head no. So it's more of a high level,
okay, so that's
conversation.
Right. Okay. What was the other one?
Well, it clearly shows, and Mr. Savoy referenced it himself, in the fact that if you want to develop a property, you would be required to do an environmental development permit.
Mr.
Yes,
Sayer, Mr. Sayer, the other point that you pointed out was the multi-use pathway.
That's correct. Yeah.
So, Mr. Savoy, is there anything in the urban tree canopy project that would build or create space for a multi-use pathway in front of Mr. Sayer's property?
No.
Okay.
No.
We're good on those two, right?
Well, no, not exactly. Why would you show something like that? Why would you put that in a presentation to the people that are affected?
Again, you didn't provide anything that you're talking about, so I can't comment.
This is your information that you provided to us in your own public forum. You did, not us.
Okay, so but on those 2 points, we're good though. Their expropriation is not on the table, and there's no multi-use path in front of your house.
If there's a presentation that shows a multi-use pathway, I don't buy it.
Okay,
if there's language in, hold on, if there's language in the EDPA legislation right now, which it currently is,
it's canceled.
Well, hold on. Mr. Savoy just said that in fact, if you were to develop a property, that you would be required to go through the environmental development process, yes?
The current ESA program.
We currently have an ESA process that's been in place for many, many years.
Since the 90s or something, yeah.
Correct. Okay, so maybe we can get to this point then. The existing, or the proposed EDPA guidelines that are written and were documented and are sitting on your website, are those being enforced right now when somebody is about to develop a property?
Mr. Savoy, are
None of the draft regulations are being enforced. The only ESA strategy or ESA policy would be part of the OCP. Anything discussed as part of the previous process, the draft document, we are not enforcing that.
It's not enforced because council didn't vote on it. Council unanimously canceled it. And I keep trying to explain this to you, but I don't think that it's.
Well, again, words matter, right? So were you aware that city staff was enforcing these EDPA guidelines before they were actually passed by council? Were you aware of that?
I have never heard of a staff member in Port Moody enforcing a policy that council chose to cancel.
Mr. Savoy, would you corroborate that?
There should be staff should not be enforcing any draft documents.
Please send in if there's
there will be testimonials from people that have been impacted by this because staff had been enforcing EDPA guidelines.
If that's part of the policy that's been canceled, that's a huge problem. And once again, I'm on your side of this argument, even though you are sort of aggressive toward us for some reason.
I'm just stating facts. I haven't been aggressive once.
I appreciate it. We've got your written submission. Council's going to be reviewing that. I see Councillor Lottie with her hand up. Councillor Lottie.
Thank you. You know, I think part of the problem here is that we're using, Mr. Mayor, you're using the word canceled, and it's really not canceled because staff has said tonight that they will be coming back with some rebranding or some they will be bringing the issue back for us to deal with. I think it might be useful for us to actually instruct staff not to bring this back unless we request it. You know, like you can't.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'll make that motion. I would call that super canceled. Yeah, let's.
Yeah, you can't call something canceled if staff have every intention of bringing it back. That's postponed.
Well, that's what canceled means, and you voted in favor of that motion.
Problem for the members of the public that are concerned about this issue, that they're not the words do matter, and saying something's canceled when it's really just coming back in a different form later. It isn't really being genuine. I think if we really want to cancel this, then we say this is not coming back. We give direction to staff never to bring this back to the table.
So your proposed motion would be for staff to never update the environmental sensitive areas.
But unless council provides direction that it's not to come back.
Yeah, that was my understanding of the canceled motion.
No,
because
Mr.
that's
Mayor,
what the motion read.
Mr. Savoy has indicated even just less than 5 minutes ago that they will be bringing it back. So, you know, I just think that we need to be clear about what it is that we're doing, because people can see through that, right? They don't trust when words are being misused.
Okay, I'll be happy to bring that one forward. Is that something that would be helpful to your group? Mr. Sayre?
Canceled is stopped. Canceled means it's over. Canceled means it's done. Canceled means no expropriation. Canceled means no pathways.
Okay.
That's what it means.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Lottie, thank you for your comments. We've gone around. This is a council meeting, not committee of the whole. We're going to cut it off there. Thank you for coming, Mr. Sayre.
Thank you very much.
We have, I think, addressed pretty much every one of the concerns several times over, and we will hopefully, Councillor Lottie, actually, I'll ping you offline. We could co-write the memo that will super cancel this project, so it's definitely canceled. And that it'll be hopefully another unanimous vote on that one, because the first one certainly was. That takes care of 3.1. We do have those sets of minutes. Do we have a motion for those? Been moved and seconded. Thank you. Please vote on those minutes that are in the agenda package. Moved and carried unanimously.